English translation. 517th contact. Saturday, the 19th of March, 2011, 14:45 hours.
Today it will take a little longer because I have some things to discuss with you, which will not be in official form.
Fine with me, although I did not think we had much to talk about today. But it is as you say, so we can start right at the beginning with what we have to talk about. For my part, I also have something else. The very thing I asked Florina to tell you so that you can decide. It is because last Wednesday I came to you about.
I agree with that, and what you are talking about is also included in what we have to discuss. If you have any specific questions and want to discuss anything, we can also do that later. What I have to discuss with you will certainly take an hour and a half.
Then go ahead and shoot. So I am curious what advice you have found, whereas I think you probably negotiated the whole thing in your committee?
That is correct, although we have decided that you should discuss with and explain.
If I have the necessary time, I will talk to this weekend.
It is to hope for the necessary insight and understanding.
Is in my opinion a little bit strongly influenced by, which is why it will certainly not be easy to get the matter straight.
It is to hope for understanding. But now we should turn to the other things.
It really took an hour and a half now, a lot more. But if it is possible, I would have one or two more questions.
Naturally.
It is because of the seaquake tsunami catastrophe in Japan. Around 6:45 HRS, Central European Time, on Friday the 11th of March, a massive earthquake, with a strength of 9.0 on the Richter scale, occurred off the Japanese coast. The earthquake triggered an enormous tsunami which rolled across the coast of the main island of Honshu. The worst affected are three prefectures in the northeast of the country: Fukushima, Iwate, Miyagi, on a 600-kilometer coastline. In Fukushima, a nuclear power plant with 6 reactors has been seriously affected. In regard to that, it is said that a super worst possible case scenario is possible. But I think that this has already happened, and now an ultra super worst possible case scenario threatens. And it is also the case that the emerging radiation and radioactive water from the reactors will not just pollute large parts of the district, rather perhaps entire tracts of land and the sea, and that the emerging radioactive particles will also be driven by the wind around the world, thus also to Europe.
Your assumption is right, that the so-called super worst possible case scenario has already occurred, being that very dangerous and extensive radiation is being emitted from Reactor 3, in which the dangerous plutonium is exposed, and which not only spreads over wide regions, rather also spreads out into the sea and seriously contaminates the sea, as well as fish and the other sea creatures, which has manifold deadly consequences. It is therefore a deliberate lie from those in charge that the disaster has not yet happened in the named form. And the occurrence of the now threatening ultra-super worst possible case scenario, as you call it, is only a question of time. The measures which are taken for the cooling of the reactors and so forth, and which are meant to prevent everything, only correspond to useless acts of desperation. But also to bear in mind with this is that the water which is taken, in desperation, from the sea to use for cooling, on the other hand, involves great danger because the seawater's salt generates dangerous effects which impair the cooling process. And the radioactive particles which are blown all over the place by the wind actually spread around the earth. We have already been able to detect 2 days ago, on the 17th of March, 2011, therefore last Thursday, such radioactive particles in the northern area of Europe as well as in Central Europe.
And is Switzerland also affected by that?
That is actually the case, whereby one can assume that the radioactive particles which have emerged up to this point in low amounts will manifest in increased quantity.
That is to be feared. But that which interests me is, how great is the possibility? That is to say, Is it even possible to decontaminate areas contaminated with radioactivity by destroying the radiation? I especially think about contamination with plutonium. The technically most important isotope, an emitter of alpha particles, is plutonium-239, with a half-life of 24,110 years. Plutonium is a silver-white, non-noble heavy metal, which is primarily artificially produced in nuclear reactors, more precisely, breeder reactors. In nature, it occurs only in very small quantities in uranium ores, where it originates from natural uranium. As a consequence of its high alpha particle radiating activity and its propensity for accumulating in the bones of human beings and other living organisms, plutonium has the effect of making the entire body radioactive. It belongs to the most dangerous of known toxins. As a rule, the inhalation of plutonium dust evokes lung cancer, whereby, however, the effect of even a few micrograms can lead to fatal radiation poisoning. At least, those are the most important facts of which I am aware, aside from the half-lives of 2 further plutonium isotopes. Of course, I am no nuclear physicist.
That which you say is naturally correct. But to your question, I can only explain that there is no possibility at all of eliminating ionizing radiation. Therefore, we also know of no effective method in this regard. Only the half-life period can be taken into consideration, during which the radiation decreases by half.
In 24,110 years, half the radioactive substance is present. After a further 24,110 years, there is, once again, half and so forth. The effective half-life indicates the time after which the radioactivity of a radioactive substance in an organism is reduced by half. The radioactive decay and the excretion from the organism lead to the decrease. I have learnt that plutonium is a radioactive chemical element from the actinide and transuranic group. It is known as a whole range of mostly man-made unstable isotopes, being at least 15, whereby the longest living, plutonium-244, has a half-life of 82,600,000 years, and plutonium-242 with a somewhat lesser longevity has a half-life of 376,300 years. I found additional half-lives in the dictionary as follows.
All that is also correct, for which reason there is nothing further to explain.
That's really all, except that I would like to talk to you about the intensified form of bullying, respectively harassment. The new form is called bullying, respectively violent chicanery, which is called bullying, which I read an article about. It would be good if you could explain some more about it to me when I ask you questions. Unfortunately, the journal article was, as usual, a bit banal and superficial, which is why I want to write something more detailed about the topic myself. But I still need some information from you.
I will gladly assist you with questions and answers. But after that, I have to go my own way again.
Thanks. Then the first question.